discussed about how to deploy Spring Boot application in the Heroku cloud. And I have prepared one video also and I posted in the YouTube. Have you seen that video in the YouTube? How to deploy our Spring Boot application in the Heroku cloud. Yesterday I discussed in the class. At the same time, I have prepared one video on that topic. Just in 10 minutes, we are able to complete that video, how to deploy the boot application in the Heroku cloud. Spring Boot with Heroku cloud deployment. By using Git CLI, by using Heroku CLI, we are able to deploy that. Have you gone through that video? Have you gone through that video, guys? Are you able to deploy the application in the Heroku cloud? Are you able to deploy your Spring Boot application in the Heroku cloud? Good. Right. Heroku is one of the leading cloud platform, right? And it is providing platform as a service. So you just develop your application, the remaining stuff will be taken care by Heroku. It will lets you develop application without worrying about the infrastructure. Just write your application code and leave the rest to Heroku. Leave the Heroku. So Heroku is going to prepare the environment which is required to run your application. Heroku is part of Salesforce. When we run our application on the Heroku, Heroku will create a concept Dino. Dino is nothing but a virtual container which is used to run our application. Dino is a virtual container which is used to run our application. So if you want to scale your application, you can increase number of dynos. If you want to scale your application, you need to increase the number of dynos that are required. Got it? Fine. So Heroku versus AWS. So I have given the video for AWS deployment also. So in the YouTube channel, how to deploy boot application in the AWS cloud. So there is a video. How to deploy Spring Boot application in the AWS cloud. 3 days back, I have given this video. 3 days back, I have given this video. Right? How to deploy the project into Heroku cloud as well as AWS cloud. Heroku cloud and AWS cloud. Got it? Fine. So AWS will provide you infrastructure as a service, whereas Heroku will provide platform as a service. Heroku will provide platform as a service. Heroku offers a managed service, whereas AWS makes several self-hosting options. Right. Heroku is generally costlier than AWS EC2. Now I'm creating a boot application. I created an app in the Heroku cloud. I installed Heroku CLI. I logged in into Heroku CLI. I pushed my code into Heroku cloud using CLI. Access application in the browser. So we are able to deploy our application on the Heroku cloud platform, and everybody can access our application using that URL. The application is available for public. The application is available for public access. Right. So this is email ID and password login. Yeah, I'm able to log in into my Heroku cloud. 5 applications are available. REST API. Now, if you click on this open app, you can see that my application is opening. I'm able to access my application, which is running in the Heroku cloud platform. So 5 applications are available for free of cost. Freely you can host 5 applications in the Heroku cloud. So after that, charges will apply. So it will allow only 5 applications to deploy for free of cost. If you want to deploy more applications, if you want to uh, deploy more applications, then you need to purchase that plan. Okay. Now go here and deploy. Go here and deploy. Go here and deploy. Got my point? Are you able to access this application now? Are you guys able to access this application? Very good. Anybody having any questions? Can you please raise your hand? Anybody having any questions? Can you please raise your hand? If you are having any questions, please raise your hand. Yeah, guys, go ahead with your questions.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Good morning,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Good
Sir,
morning, sir. Tell
am
me.
I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Sir, my question was, uh,
Can you?
Hello.
Can you?
Good
Yes, sir.
morning, sir.
Very good morning, sir.
Yesterday I have tried with to deploy the code on Heroku, but unable to do it. I have tried many times. That actually, what's happened that I am using Java 11. So, is there an issue with Java 11 or just
No issue, sir. No issue. I am using Java 8. I'm using Java 8.
sir,
okay.
this deployment developers do or
Sir, this
DevOps people do, sir?
This Heroku cloud, it is just for practice purpose. We are learning to understand the cloud deployment, right?
Okay.
Okay, in the real time, we will be using AWS cloud. DevOps people will do that deployment. But as a
Just for
developer, also you
understanding.
should have some idea.
Okay. Fine, sir.
But the same code I have deployed in EC2 instance, it's working fine.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, whatever video you have given that I use it and deploy it in AWS cloud. It's working fine.
Yep. 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 So are you using Heroku CLI or GitHub?
Heroku CLI,
Heroku
as
CLI.
you skips mentioned, yes.
Yeah. Heroku CLI only you are using.
Yes.
We will check
Every
that
time
issue,
it's
sir.
showing that release, the issue is release version 11, something like that.
So we will check that, sir. What is the issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, sir. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, sir. Good morning, sir.
Very good morning.
Sir, actually, I'm using, previously I used the Spring tool suit 4, but it is working. as you started in the project batch, starting in what's Maven, right? I installed all the things I removed and I started. But when opening again, I install to Spring Boot tools. It is not opening while using the command from. It is created the project by using Maven.
Sure,
Standard
sir.
Maven.
I will conduct a doubts session. I will solve these problems. Okay. I will share in the group. So if you have any doubts, you can do that.
Yes, sir. It is, I am unable to.
Yeah.
Because starting onwards, I am unable to practice due to I don't have a laptop. Right now, I got a laptop from last 2 weeks,
Sure, sir.
but
I
I'm
got it.
trying. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. I will resolve it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any
Hello.
other questions? Anybody?
Hello, sir. Good morning. Very good
Very good
morning, sir.
morning, sir. Very good morning.
Sir, I have doubt regarding RESTful web services.
Yeah, please tell me.
Sir, can we send some tokens in header for
Yes, sir.
security?
I will explain the tokens concept in the security.
Okay. And second one, sir, actually, I have some doubts regarding JSON and JSON schema. Both are the difference or same?
JSON schema is nothing but representing the structure, what in which format that JSON data should look like, what are the keys should be there, what is the order should be there. That is JSON schema. JSON means it is a data which will represent that.
Okay. Because when I see the structure, like inside that, some logic like and logic and view or logic. So actually, I'm confusing. So can you make some a little bit videos for that?
Sure, sir.
Okay. And third one, sir, I have doubt regarding SSL certificate. So can you take that in this slide?
SSL certificate also. Okay.
Please, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, Yesterday in the morning class, there was a concept of multiple modules. No? Was
Yeah. Next one, guys. Next question.
Hello, so
am I
Sanjay,
audible?
Sanjay this side.
Yeah. Hi, Sanjay.
So, sir, I am facing problem while setting up Lombok. I have tried everything. I have gone through your video, but still, it is not resolved.
Your Lombok issue. Yes, sir. You mentioned that. Yep.
Yes,
Understood. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Sir, I need to resolve that issue. I will check it. So
Okay.
after installing the Lombok jar file, you need to close your IDE, restart your IDE,
Yes,
then
sir. I have
it
did
should
this.
work.
No,
Yeah,
sir,
I
I
will.
have. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I will check that, sir. This Saturday I will take it for problem solving. Okay,
Okay.
because
Okay, sir.
people are having issue. I will conduct a meeting to solve the problems.
Okay, sir. Thank
Yeah. Any other doubts? Anyone?
sir, one doubt.
Yeah, please.
Sir, in the Maven yesterday's class, like there was a concept of multiple modules, right?
Right.
Parent-child relation.
Yes.
You said it is not being used with the microservices or RESTful services, but in my project they are using the parent-child relationship.
Yes, sir. If you have a requirement, then you can use it. It's no problem. But when the microservices concept started, people are developing everything as a separate API, na? So
Independent.
no need of go for the parent and child. If your project having that requirement, you can use it, no problem. Okay,
Yeah.
right. Fine, guys. Good.
Yeah. Hi.
Next one.
Hello.
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 Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
Yeah, I deployed the project, but I got the 503 errors. So what's
Where?
like I deploy in a Heroku cloud.
Okay, you are getting a
Yeah,
error with the Heroku deployment. Okay, fine, sir.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Understood. I will check
503.
that issue. So can you go through the video also once again? Are you missing
Yeah,
any
like
step?
I did like 3 or 4 times. I delete the whole project and
Mhm.
try again,
Still
but
no
same
luck,
time,
huh?
yeah. So I try to find out on Stack Overflow, but they are talking some like technical things which I didn't get it. So
Sure, sir. We will check that issue.
okay,
Okay.
sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Ashok sir.
Hello, sir.
Sir, a doubt like when do we go for Jenkins and when do we go for this cloud deployment like using AWS or Azure? Sir.
Sir, always we will use both. Cloud deployment we will do. Jenkins is a tool which will deploy the projects into the cloud automatically. Both are different, right? So it's not like if you use a cloud, then we don't need to use Jenkins, or if we use Jenkins, we don't need to use cloud. No, So my project is having AWS cloud to deploy. Instead of we are deploying the code into AWS cloud manually, we will use Jenkins to do that deployment automatically.
Okay.
Got my point?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, yesterday I have an interview. He asked one question. You explained, I saw one of your video regarding that load balancer,
Yeah.
horizontal scaling, sir.
Right.
We are going to, we will deploy our application in multiple servers, right?
Right.
So he asked me, how can we do that? Like, how can we deploy multiple, how can we deploy our application in multiple servers? How can we achieve that? He asked, sir. What
So
we have.
no, if you have a multiple servers, now yesterday I have posted a video how to deploy a Spring Boot project into AWS cloud, right? So I
Yes.
created one virtual machine I have deployed in that. Similarly, I will create 10 virtual machines. In the 10 machines, I will deploy my application. Those are 10 machines I will connect it to my load balancer.
So for that, we need any configurations and also.
Yes, load balancer configuration we need to do.
Okay.
Yep. In that, in our class, we are going to discuss in the microservices. I will show you the load balancing.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Right. Next week, we are going to start with microservices, right? In the microservices, I will show you the load balancing part.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Ashok, sir.
Hello, sir.
Sir, actually, one doubt I have.
Please tell me.
Yes, while creating the account for AWS, okay, which one do I need to choose? One option is there that of free or all time
Free
free.
tier, free tier, free tier, free tier.
Free tier. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, you need to create free tier option. 1 year it will be free. You can use the services for free of cost without paying the money.
Okay, okay.
You need to use free tier option.
Yeah, okay, sir. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Very, very good morning. Kapil this side.
Yeah, hi Kapil.
Sir, my question is that we have the embedded server, right? Like Apache Tomcat, inbuilt Apache Tomcat is there.
Yes,
But
right.
there is any need, sir, like we need to install manually Apache Kafka, Apache server in that? Because
No,
yesterday
sir.
I seen in our last batch, you also installed that server in bottom in workspace. So,
No, sir. If you are going with the Spring Boot application, then external server concept is not required. Embedded server is sufficient. If your application is not using Spring Boot, if your application is based on normal Spring MVC or normal servlets and JSP, then you need to install the external Tomcat. For Spring Boot applications, it is not required.
okay. In
Understood?
normal Java program, we need like Tomcat, right?
Yes, for normal web applications which developed without Spring Boot.
Got it, sir. Got it.
Yeah,
Thank you so
because
much, sir.
when you run the Spring Boot application, they will have a embedded container. They will run by using embedded container directly.
Okay. And sir, actually, you mentioned you don't need to install the Maven if you go with the IDE.
IDE,
So,
correct.
yeah. So, sir, both paths are we need to set up in like JDK also and Maven also in same path, right? If I'm not
Yes,
wrong.
right.
Okay, got it. Because that the little bit confusion yesterday. My hard disk is totally crashed, so I format and reinstalling all the stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Sir, good morning, sir.
Very good morning.
Sir, my doubt is when I'm using Postman and when I'm using GET request there, so sir, that is not working in Postman. But when I'm using in this Chrome, then it is working. But
Maybe check the header. Say maybe some header is setting in the Postman which is not accepting.
so I'm using GET and I'm using the correct URL.
I am saying that headers. In the Postman, there is a header. Now, if you set incorrect header value, then it will not accept your request. From the browser, you are not setting any header. When you send a request from the browser, it will take by default, right? When you are sending from the Postman, there is a chance of setting that header. Check the headers what you are setting.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, sir. Sir,
Hi,
actually, I have one doubt.
Yeah. Please
Sir,
tell
in okay.
So when can we deploy the project? After completion of the project, we need to deploy, or when can we
No,
deploy?
sir. No, sir. The deployments will happen every day because for our developers, they will give one dev environment. In dev environment, once your code is completed for one functionality, to test that code in the dev environment, you can deploy it immediately. So in the company, there is a concept called Jenkins to do the deployments.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, Jenkins there.
Jenkins will
Okay,
be
sir.
there.
Every day, every code we need to deploy for
Huh.
testing
Every
purposes.
developer will deploy the code every day, multiple times for testing purpose.
But sir, in real time, what is the recommended AWS cloud or in Heroku cloud?
Mostly people will go for AWS cloud.
Okay, sir. Okay.
My question is related to the deployment.
Yeah, hi Sandeep, your voice is not clear, man. Speak loudly.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah,
My question is related to the deployment.
yeah,
As you said earlier, we have to deploy one application in 10 servers, for example. So that one API or multiple APIs in 10 systems. So for example, 10 APIs are there. These 10 APIs we deploy in 10 different servers.
yes. 10 APIs will be deployed to 10 different servers.
Not the same API in different.
That is also we can do. That also we can do.
Which
Suppose
is
if you have assume that there are 3 APIs available. For 3 APIs, you will deploy in 3 different servers. One of your API getting more traffic. For that API, we will do auto scaling. That API will be deployed into multiple servers.
based on the traffic we will decide.
Yes, based on the traffic which is coming to that API, we will decide in how many servers we need to deploy. In the microservices, I will talk about that concept, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Tushar here.
Yeah. Hi, Tushar.
Sir, I have one doubt. Suppose in my product, I am using 2 versions, like 3 versions, version 1, version 2, version 3.
Yeah.
So I'm right now, I want to 3 versions. So when I click, suppose like one APIs like check balance, and I want version 1, version 2, version 3. So how can I handle in URL?
What version to what version? I did not get your point.
Suppose in URL, we are passing version 1, in version 2, version 3, like that.
Okay, you need to deploy all the 3 versions in your application. 3 versions will be binded to 3 different URL patterns.
Yeah.
Three,
Yes.
3 different subdomains should be there for your project.
Yes.
Yeah. So this week I will make a video how to map our server URL to a domain name.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, sorry. Actually, the question is that like, can I install two JDK like JDK 1.8 and JDK 11? There
You
is
can
any problem?
you can install it, but for which one you will set the Java home and Java path, that will be considered.
Okay, JDK 8. Okay, okay, got it, sir.
Yeah.
Because JDK 11 don't have the like JRE, so
Yes,
that's
right.
why I'm asking. Okay,
Which
thank
one
you, sir.
you
Got
set
it.
the path, Java home and
Mhm.
Java path, that one will be considered for your applications.
Okay, suppose sir, I set the both paths like Java home path, so it will give me confliction over
Conflict,
there.
sir. Conflict. That is not recommended. That is not recommended. You should use only one.
Got it, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, perfect. All right, guys. Now let's get started with our session. So far we developed our REST API. That means we developed a resource using our Spring Boot. So what is the meaning of resource? We developed a project. That project we can call it as REST API. That project we can call it as REST API. We can also call it as it is a provider application or it is a resource application. We can call it as a provider. So what is the meaning of a provider? The application which is giving the services to other applications, it is called as provider application. Now my application is developed and my application is deployed into Heroku cloud platform, or I can deploy that into AWS also. Heroku or AWS cloud. I deployed this application in the Heroku cloud platform. Now, how we are accessing my application? We are accessing my application from browser. We are accessing my application from browser. That means you are sending a HTTP request to my application and you are accessing my application. Right? This is my SB REST API. If you click on open app, this is the URL of my application. So people are able to access my application by using this URL. Now, how to access my application from the other application? So this is my distributed application. Now, I developed one REST API. So whenever you send a request to this REST API using this URL, it is providing some response. Currently, where is my application running? My application is running in my local system. Our application is running in the cloud system. Guys, please respond to my questions. Application is running in my local, or application is running in the cloud? Application is running in the local, or application is running in the cloud platform now? Application is running in the cloud platform. Other application want to access our application. Other applications want to access our application. This is called as client application. This is called as client application. So this client application can be developed by using any technology. My application is developed by using Java Spring Boot, that is a REST API, that is a distributed application. Now, anybody who want to access my application, they can access by using my application URL. My application is running in the cloud platform. So this is called as distributed application. If one application is communicating with another application, then that is called as distributed application. Client application should make a request to this REST API using HTTP protocol. Client application should make a request to this REST API using HTTP protocol, and this REST API will provide some response to this client application. So this is called as HTTP request. This is called as HTTP request, and this is called as HTTP response. HTTP request will be available, HTTP response will be available. This client application is running in my system. This client application is running in my system. This is my personal computer. In my personal computer, client application is running my PC, my personal computer. The REST API is running in the cloud platform. One application want to access another application. So this application can be developed by using .NET, or it can be developed by using Python. It can be developed by using Java. It can be developed by using Java also, because we are developing distributed applications. If one application is communicating with another application, then those applications are called as distributed applications. Are you clear with my point? So first we understood how to develop a REST API. REST API nothing but the application which is providing services to other applications is called REST API. We developed REST API. We are able to test the REST API from the Postman, and we are able to access it also from the browser. We are able to access it also from the browser. Now, and we even deployed that application in the cloud platform. We even deployed that application in the cloud platform. Got my point? Now, I want to access that application from another application. I want to access that application from the another application. How to access one application from the another application? By developing a client. How to develop the client? You can use any technology to develop the client. By using Java, you can develop a REST client. By using .NET, you can develop a REST client. By using Python, you can develop a REST client. By using PHP also, you can develop a REST client. REST client nothing but the application which is going to access another application is called as a REST, is called as a REST client. The application which is accessing another application is called as a REST client application. Now, REST client application will make a request to REST API using HTTP protocol. REST API will process the request and will send the response. Now, here we can develop this in the Spring Boot. We can develop the REST client in two ways. One is by using REST template. Second one is by using web client. Now here REST template is outdated approach. Okay, it is legacy. Web client, it is trending. Web client, it is trending. How many ways we can develop REST clients in the Spring Boot? We can develop REST clients in the Spring Boot in two ways. One is by using REST template and the second one is by using web client. We can develop REST client. We can develop REST client. We can develop REST client in two ways using Spring Boot. What are those two ways? One is by using REST template, another one is by using web client. REST template is the old approach, guys. REST template is the old approach. Web client is the latest approach. Spring 5.x version introduced in the Spring 5.x. Introduced in Spring 5.x. Web client introduced in Spring 5.x version. REST template is the old version component. Still, people are using REST template, but Spring told that don't go for REST template, go for web client. So there are two options available in order to develop REST client application by using Spring Boot. So here my API is developed. My API is running in the Heroku. API also developed by using Java. API can be developed by using any technology. Client also can be developed by using any technology. So now I'm going to develop one client application. Let us see here how to develop a client. New Spring Starter project. First client I am going to develop. 38 REST Spring Boot 38 Spring Boot REST client app. REST client using REST template. I'm developing a client by using REST template, guys. Spring Boot REST template app, I can say. 38 Spring Boot REST template app. Click on next. Click on web starter, dev tools. REST template is a predefined class which is part of Spring web dependency. Click on next. Click on finish. Click on next. Click on finish. Right now this is REST template application. REST template is a predefined class, guys. REST template is a predefined class. Using that REST template class, we can send HTTP request to the REST APIs. We can send HTTP request to the REST API. I created a boot application. One start class got created. Now see, within this start class, I'm going to create an object for REST template. I'm going to create object for REST template. REST template object I'm going to create. REST template RT is equal to new REST template. REST template RT is equal to new REST template. Okay. REST template dot get for entity. REST template dot get for entity. So what is your REST API URL? String REST URL. String API URL. So where is our API running? What is the URL to access our API? That API URL we need to give as an input for this method. So this is my API URL. This is my API URL. I want to send a request to this URL from my Java application. So which class I am using to send a request to this API URL? I am using REST template. REST template is a predefined class which is used to send the HTTP request to the given URL. What this API is returning to me, that is just a welcome API. That API is returning a string data. So I'm representing that as a string dot class. Get for entity. Now I got for entity, response entity I got. Now for entity dot get body. What is the response body we are getting from the REST API? That response body, you can access the response status code and you can access the response body also. This is called REST client logic. Can you guys see this? What is the logic I'm writing to access a REST API using Spring Boot? What is the logic I'm writing to access a REST API using Spring Boot? What is the logic I'm writing to access a Spring REST API, guys? See the logic? Which class I am using to develop? Which class I am using to develop the REST client logic now? REST template class I am using. REST template is a predefined class which is available in Web Starter. REST template is a predefined class which is available in the Web Starter. So this is my REST API URL, API developed by somebody. It is running in the cloud platform. We don't know by using which technology this API developed. We know the URL and we know how to access it. That's it. This is my API URL, creating object for the REST template, REST template.get for entity, API URL string.class for entity. So for entity.get body, we are getting the body data. All right, now run this application, run as boot application, see the response. Are we able to access REST API using this REST template? API running in the Heroku cloud, this client application running in my system. Client application trying to access the API. Are you able to get the response? Are you able to get the response? Guys, come on. Are you able to get the response? How one application is communicated with another application now? Can we say it is a distributed application? Can we say it is a distributed application? One application is communicating with another application. One application is communicating with another application, that is called as distributed application. One application communicating with another application, that is called as distributed application. So this project can be developed by using any technology. This project also can be developed by using any technology. Two applications are communicating using HTTP protocol, right? In order to develop a client, in order to develop a client application, what we need to know what is the URL, what is the input, what is the output, and what is the input and what is the output. Those details we need to understand. Okay, so what is REST client? REST client development. REST client. REST client. Can you guys tell me what is a REST client now? The application which is accessing the REST API, the application which is accessing REST API is called as REST client. Every programming language having the support to develop REST clients. Every programming language having support to develop REST clients. By using Java, we can develop REST client. By using Spring Boot also, we can develop REST client. By using Java, we can develop REST client. By using Spring Boot also, we can develop REST client. Using Spring Boot also, we can develop REST client. In Spring Boot, we have below two components to develop REST client. Okay, one is REST template. Second one is web client. One is REST template, second one is web client. Right. Introduced in Spring 5.x version. Introduced in Spring 5.x version. REST template is part of Web Starter. REST template is a predefined class, which is part of Spring Boot web starter dependency. So if you want to use a REST template class, you need to add boot starter web dependency. It supports only synchronous communication. It supports only synchronous communication. Web client is an interface. Which is a part of Spring Boot starter. This is Spring Boot starter web. This is Spring Boot starter web flux. Spring Boot starter web flux dependency. It supports both synchronous and asynchronous communication. It supports both synchronous and asynchronous communication. So currently we used REST template. REST template is a predefined class. It is a part of boot starter web dependency. By using this, we can develop REST client. Those REST client supports only synchronous communication. Synchronous communication means it is linear process. It will make a request and it will wait for the response. Whereas when you go for web client is an interface which is part of the boot starter web flux dependency. It supports both synchronous and asynchronous communication. Got my point? The application which is accessing the REST API is called as REST client. Now you see there is one REST API which is running in the Heroku cloud. So this is the URL of the Heroku cloud. This is the URL of my Heroku cloud application. Now I want to access that application by using another application. The application which is accessing the REST API is called as REST client. REST client will access REST API by sending HTTP request. Every REST clients will send REST client application and REST API application. REST client application and REST API application will communicate using HTTP as a mediator. HTTP request and HTTP response. Every programming language having the support to develop REST API. Java will support, .NET will support, Python will support, PHP will support. Every programming language will support to develop REST clients. Using Spring Boot also we can develop REST clients. Using Spring Boot also we can develop REST client applications. Got it? So what are the approaches available in the Spring Boot to develop the REST clients? We are having REST template and web client. REST template is a predefined class which is a part of boot starter web dependency. It supports only synchronous communication. Web client is an interface which is part of web flux dependency. Web flux dependency supports both synchronous and asynchronous communication. I will tell you what is synchronous and what is asynchronous. Okay, good. Now here, when we are going for REST template, there are some methods available to send a request. Get for entity, which is used to send a get request. Okay, so to develop REST API, to develop REST client, we need to know REST API details. Like what is the, we need to know REST API details, URL of API, input request format of API request, API request details, API response details, API URL, how to access that API URL, API request method, API request data, API request information, API request data structure, and API response data structure. In which format it is accepting the input, what data it is accepting as input, what data it, in which data we need to send in the request, which data we are going to get in the response. We should know all these details, then only we can develop the client. API developed by one company. API developed by one company. Now I want to develop a client. Can I directly develop a client, or I need the API details to develop a client? Can we directly develop a client, or to develop a client we need to know the details of the API? Come on guys. If you want to develop a client, what information is required for you? If you want to develop a client, what information is required for you? Come on. We need the details of the API. What is the request? What is the response? All the API details we need, then only we can develop the API. How we will get the API details, guys? How we will get the API details? Can you tell me? How we will get the API details? Can you tell me now? Swagger. That's right. That's right. Swagger. So API team, REST API team will send Swagger documentation to REST client side team. REST client side team. Using Swagger documentation, we need to understand the API and we need to develop client logic. We need to develop REST client logic to access REST API. Are you clear with my point now? We can develop a REST client by using REST template and web client. REST template is a predefined class. It is part of web starter dependency. It supports only synchronous communication. Web client is an interface which is part of web starter, webplex dependency. Webplex supports both synchronous and asynchronous communication. That is fine. To develop REST client, we need to know REST API details. That means where is the API? What is the request method? Do I need to send a GET request for the API? Do I need to send a POST request for the API? What data I need to send in the request? What data I am going to get in the response? That logic I need to, that information I need to know. If I know the details of the API, then only I can write the logic to send the request to the API. How I will get that API details? Whoever developed API, those people will give you Swagger documentation. Using that Swagger documentation, you can understand the API details and you can develop your client logic. You can understand the API details and you can develop the client logic. Now, I will give you one of the API documentation. I have a train application booking the ticket. I'm going to give you API documentation of my train application. Okay. So can you develop a client for that? Can you develop a client for that? So this is the logic which I am using to access welcome API. This is the logic which I am using to access my welcome API. So this is the URL, API URL. It is running in my Heroku cloud. Sample logic to access example, REST template example. REST template example to access REST API. REST template example to access REST API. REST API running in the cloud platform. I developed logic to access that REST API by using GET request, API URL, and get for entity to make a get request. It is giving the response entity body data. That body I am able to print. So when I print that body, you can see on the console, I got the response, welcome to Ashok IT. If you access this URL from outside also, you will get the same response, welcome to Ashok IT. From browser we are able to access, from our Java project also we are able to access. This Java project contains the logic to access the REST API. So this project is called as the REST client project. This project is called as REST client project. Are you clear? Are you clear with my point now? Are you clear with my point now? Very good. Now we are having one application in the Heroku. Rail application is available. For that, documentation is also available. Now, using this documentation, we need to develop client logic. Okay, so this is the documentation. We using this documentation, we need to develop client logic. How many ways we can develop the client for this? How many ways we can provide? How many ways we can develop the client in the Spring Boot? How many ways we can develop the client using Spring Boot? 2 ways. What are the 2 ways? REST template and web client. What is the difference between REST template and web client? What is the difference between REST template and web client? Synchronous and asynchronous. The synchronous, what is the meaning of synchronous and asynchronous? What is the meaning of synchronous and asynchronous? What is the meaning of synchronous and asynchronous? Synchronous means blocking. Asynchronous means non-blocking. Synchronous means blocking. Asynchronous means non-blocking. Okay. What is the meaning of that synchronous and asynchronous? Let's understand. Here, I am having one application. My application want to access to other applications. Okay. So this is API 1. This is API 1. And this is API 2. This is my logic. This is my client logic. My client REST template. Okay. Access API 1 and access API 2. Call API 1, call API 2. Call API 1 and call API 2. So this is the logic I am writing in my project. This is the logic I'm writing in my project. Call the API 1 and call the API 2. This is my requirement. I want to develop a client which will access 2 REST APIs from 2 different companies. I want to develop a application. This is my client application. This is my client application. My client application want to access 2 REST APIs. Call API 1 and call API 2. Here logic is available to call the API 1. Here logic is available to call the API 2. Right. If you go for REST template now, if you go for REST template, right, what will happen? It is going to execute this call API 1. Then it will wait for the response from the API 1. Once the response comes from the API 1, then only it will proceed further to execute the next logic. So it is a blocking thread. Your thread will be blocked unless you get the response from the API 1. That is called synchronous. Synchronous means blocking thread. Synchronous means blocking thread. I want to make 2 REST calls. My client application want to access 2 REST APIs. I want to access API 1. I want to access API 2. If I go for REST template concept, it will execute this logic. I have a logic to access API 1 now. It will go to the API 1. Till API 1 give the response, my thread will wait here. My thread will wait here. After I got the response from the API 1, then only my thread will proceed further to make the API call to or any other logic which I want to execute. That is called synchronous. If you go for asynchronous communication, right, it is going to execute continuously without waiting for any response. Your threads will not be blocked. So synchronous means a blocking concept. Asynchronous means non-blocking concept. If I go for web client, call API1, send a request, don't wait. Continue the next logic, then make a call to also. Don't wait for anything. Don't wait for anything. So it is going to execute asynchronously. When you use a REST template, it is synchronous. When you use a web client, it is asynchronous. It is asynchronous, right? Now you can see in the documentation also, REST template documentation given by Spring people. Yeah, see this? REST template is a predefined class. Can you guys read? This is a class which is a predefined REST template. Now, can you guys please read these points? Official Spring documentation I opened. Can you please read this? Synchronous client to perform HTTP request. If you want to perform a HTTP request, if you want to access other applications by using HTTP request, then you can go for REST template. Synchronous client to perform HTTP request, exposing a simple template method API over underlying HTTP client libraries such as JDK, HTTP URL connection, Apache HTTP components. When you use REST template to develop REST client, internally it is using Apache HTTP components, HTTP URL connection classes internally to make a network call. Because one application is running in the internet, we are able to access that application from our system. That means network calls are happening. How the network calls are happening? The REST template is accessing those applications internally using these classes. So this is a synchronous client to perform HTTP request. It is having several methods to make the HTTP request. One of the method I have used, get for entity. One of the method I have used, get for entity. REST template offers the templates for common scenarios by HTTP, a generalized method available exchange method. Now, as of Spring 5.0, this class is in maintenance mode with only minor requests for changes and bugs to be accepted going forward. Please consider using web client which has a more modern API and support synchronous, asynchronous and streaming scenarios. What Spring is telling? REST template introduced in the Spring 3.0, but current market using Spring 5.0. As of 5.0, they told that REST template class is in the maintenance mode. So in going forward, if any bugs comes in the REST template, any changes they are not going to accept. Only minor changes they are going to accept. Please consider using web client which has a modern API and support synchronous and asynchronous and streaming scenarios. So what Spring is telling? What Spring is telling? Spring is telling to use REST template or Spring is telling to use web client? Spring is telling to use web client. Is it my statement? Is it my statement? REST template is outdated? Am I saying that is it REST template is outdated on my own? No. Who is telling that REST template is outdated? Spring official documentation only telling that don't use a REST template, go for web client. Samjhay? So do we need to waste our time by learning all the concepts in the REST template? Do we need to waste our time by spending all the time, all the concepts we are going to learn in the REST template? That is already outdated. That introduced in the Spring 3.0, Spring 5.0 onwards, they are telling don't use REST template, go for web client. Web client supports synchronous and asynchronous. So what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous? What is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous communication? Synchronous communication means blocking. Asynchronous communication means non-blocking. Synchronous communication means blocking. Asynchronous communication means non-blocking. Non-blocking. Got it? Now, can we achieve synchronous also by using web client? Web client supports both synchronous communications as well as asynchronous communications. Okay. So please practice how to develop a REST client by using web client and REST template, right? So first we discussed about the REST template. In the next session, I will explain how to work with web client. Already our API is ready. My API is ready. My documentation is also ready. By using this Swagger documentation, we need to create the REST client. That we will learn in the next session. Okay, guys. So tomorrow we don't have a class, guys. So tomorrow I have some personal work. We have our next class on Saturday. We have our next class on Saturday. Saturday we will discuss about web client. Okay. So this is my Swagger URL. Using this Swagger URL, you can develop our REST clients. Right. This is my Swagger URL. I gave my Swagger URL. You can understand the Swagger documentation of my REST API. That is a book app. Okay, book app is there. Yeah, we can perform the CRUD operations on this book app. You can perform the CRUD operations on the book app. My Swagger URL is available. Okay, guys. So please do practice on this before coming to this tomorrow session. In the next session, I will tell you how to work with web client and how to develop REST client by using web client. Okay, fine, guys. So tomorrow we don't have morning classes. Tomorrow we don't have morning classes. All right. Thank you. We'll see you on Saturday. So please practice client development before coming to Saturday's class. Saturday we will discuss more about web client. Thank you, guys.